All right, welcome back to another episode. Today we're going to be doing some blonde hair. So I've got these Mama Mudthump wigs that we're going to paint up blonde. And I'm going to touch up the hair on this Marvel Legends Angel figure. So first thing I'm going to do, I'm going to pull this. So a lot of these Marvel Legends, they have separate hair pieces. So let me yank this thing off of this guy. There's a little bit of glue stuck there. I'm trying not to rip it. So I might have to heat that up a little bit, maybe even use a little bit in Xacto. It looks like it's got a little glue stuck there, but I'm gonna take this off. I'm gonna take these downstairs, gonna prime these all up, and then I'll be back and we'll start working on this blonde hair. So here we go.
You best get ready, cause now it's time for Art by Akerman.
Okay, I'm back and I've done a little zenithal priming with these Mama Mudthump wings, as well as the angel hairpiece. So I did a Deathguard green primer and then did a kind of a white zenithal on top. And for hair, I'm gonna try something a little different today. I'm gonna use this SoFlat yellow Oxide. In the past, I have used, I don't even have it out. There's like a Akerman Sunset from Citadel. Sometimes I'll use this as a base and then use the Akerman on top of it. But that Akerman Sunset tends to get really chunky easily. Like I've been through several bottles that I've had to throw away because it just kind of chunks up. This color is kind of similar to that, a little bit darker. But I'm going to use this as a base, and then I'll probably mix it with some of this, which is the Bismuth Vanadate yellow, to lighten it up for the highlights. And then I'm also going to use some Seraphim Sepia for shading. So first, let me get some of this down. Actually, I'll get all my paints down, and then I will be right back because you guys don't need me to watch me do that. Okay, put some paint down. And I've got a few different brushes I'm going to use today. So from Golden, I've got number 1 that has the kind of angled tip on there. It's kind of a good basing brush. I've grabbed a number 5 or 5/0 Golden, a 10/0 Golden, and then a couple dry brushes. I think both of these are elf brushes. This is a bigger, not too big, but bigger elf brush, and then a really tiny elf brush for dry brushing. So all right, let's get started. So I'm gonna start with the, what was that color? Yellow Oxide. And we're just gonna kind of base all of these out with this yellow Oxide. I'm gonna try to make sure I got it thin enough. I don't want it to completely cover that, that zenithal priming that we did. So I wanna make sure that it's the right consistency, which I think that looks pretty good. So just gonna start covering these and try to get good coverage on it, making sure to not pool up in areas. So if I see it start to kind of pool up, I'll just go back over that and try to thin it. And I'm just, like I said, trying to get full coverage on this right now. So, and I'm really, after last week's, what's on your desk Wednesday, I'm trying to make sure I'm doing a much better job of keeping it under the camera as I'm painting. I also got a new phone since last week, so hopefully the picture, I think it should be actually better based on the camera, but I guess we'll see when we're done. But just going through, like I said, making sure I'm getting full coverage and making sure no areas are like really pooling up in the crevices and obscuring the details. I'm gonna have that shade that I'm gonna put on there that I don't mind if that pools up a little bit because it's really liquidy. But as far as the actual paint, I don't want it to like dry and kind of fill up those areas and not show those sculptural details. So I think I've got pretty good coverage. What I'll do is I'll let that dry, and then I'll come back and see if there's any areas that I need to touch up. And, you know, if you wanted to, you could just leave this like this. And when, at the beginning of the video, when I showed that one from the you know, angel figure, the Marvel Legends angel, that's kind of, they just sculpted it in the color that they wanted and left it like that. So it was just one solid color. So you could put a solid color on it and leave it, but if you can add some shades and highlights, I think it'll make it look a lot better. And that's a great figure. I love that angel figure, but I think just touching up the hair is going to make a huge difference. So same thing, just getting full coverage on this. And this has even tinier details, because even though they're both, you know, technically 1/12 scale, you know, Marvel Legends are a little bit on the smaller side compared to Mythic Legions. So it's more of like your 6-inch scale rather than your 7-inch scale. So there we go. I feel like we got pretty good coverage on that. And I'm just gonna keep working on the other. I got 2 more wigs to go with those 2, the 3 overall goblin heads that I did last week. So let me base these out, and then I'll be right back, and we'll start working on, we'll check to see if we need a second coat, and then we'll start working on the shading. So I will be right back. Okay, so I've got an initial base coat on those, but this sculpt also has a lot of crevices, a lot of details in it. I can pull over my magnifier. I'm not sure if that's gonna work or not. We'll see. Maybe if I do a little bit higher or lower, I think right here might be the best. I don't know. But it's got a lot of sculptural details in it. And so, you know, there's certain areas where paint just did not get into it. And so I want to make sure that I've got all those areas. So I'm going to go back through. I've got a number 1 brush that I picked up. And I'm gonna just make sure that I've got all those little crevices filled in, make sure that I've got a good overall coat on this, and then we'll go ahead and start working on the shades and stuff. So I will be right back. Well, I guess let me just show you a little bit of that first. So get some water over here. Okay, and then basically what I'm gonna do is just find these areas where there's just a lot of depth, or like down here, there's some areas like this that you kind of got to get into. And I'm just gonna make sure that I've got all of that filled in and covered. So yep, just going through and kind of hitting all those areas. So let me do that on all 3 of these, and then I will be back. I want to point something out real quick as I'm kind of working on this, you know, getting that base coat finished up. So as I was working on this and painting, I'm not sure if you guys are going to be able to see this. Let me grab my Xacto and I can kind of point this out. So underneath this wig, there's a couple of supports here that need to be trimmed down. And normally, you know, if I had supports, like let's say on the out, like let's say this was a full head, right? And I had supports on the outside, I normally focus on getting those off, whether it's with an Xacto knife, sand it down, whatever, beforehand, before I start painting. If it's usually underneath, like on a full head, I don't worry about it too much, you know, especially if it's just like a little nubbin, because, you know, that's gonna get filled with blue tack or hot glue or whatever anyway, to put it on the head. This, however, is just a wig. And this is going to pop on those Mama Mudthump heads that we painted last week. And what I don't want is for these to end up scratching the paint job that we did on that one. And so I need to work on these. So what I'm gonna do is I'm just gonna take my Xacto knife, and I hope that this shows. Let me try to position my magnifier. So So like right here, there's one, and I'm just gonna carefully, you wanna make sure your Xacto knife is really sharp, and I'm just gonna kind of gently kind of saw into it until it pops off, pops loose. Okay. And then, and you know, obviously be careful, don't cut yourself, all that kind of good stuff. And want to make sure that it's fairly smooth, because I don't want, like I said, I don't want that cutting or scraping that head sculpt that we're going to be doing, or that we've, you know, putting this on. So, and I'm just making sure all those supports are nice and trimmed down. And I think I got one more here. Sometimes until you prime it and start getting some paint on it, sometimes it's hard to see some of these. But if you see them, you know, even if it's on the outside, you know, you can just trim it down, and then, you know, if you need to sand it, sand it. If you don't, you don't. And then, you know, work from there. So I think that's pretty good. And then when I'm talking about sanding, you know, these are what I use. They're sanding sticks. I'll put a link up in the description, but it comes with an 80 grit all the way up to 7,000. So, and if you go up to like the 7,000, you can make this stuff like as smooth as glass. So, just gonna go through here and just make sure that that's sanded down nice and even. So these sanding sticks are nice because they're tapered at the end, and so you can get into, you know, tiny spaces, and then they get wider in the middle. So if you need to go over bigger spaces, you kind of have some bigger coverage. So, you know, you typically want to start with your low grit. You don't have to go all the way to 80, depending on how much, like what you're trying to do on there. Then you want to go up from there. This one, it's going to be hard to see, but this one is 180, and then I think from there it goes to 400. Let me see if I can find it. Yeah, this one's a 400, which is hard to see. That's one bad thing, is that as you sand it, the numbers kind of get obscured. But so I'm just going to go in here with the 180 and just go over that area that I just did with the 80, and just make sure. Now you can see that will start to happen as you use these more. The sandpaper will start to kind of bunge up, so you just want to be careful there. But I mean, you get, I think when you order, you get a full set of these 4 times over. So it gives you 4 of the 80, 4 of the 180, all the way up to 4 of the 7,000, for not a really high amount. I don't remember the exact number offhand, but maybe I'll post it in a little text message on this video after as I'm editing. But like I said, I'll have a link in the description. So there's 180, then I'll go to the 400, and you know, you can decide when to stop. Like when it gets to a point where you're like, okay, that's smooth enough, especially for the underside of this, you know, you can call it a day. So I'm just feeling that at 400, I'm probably going to call that. So what I'll do is I'll just blow that dust off. I'll make sure I don't have any supports under the other ones. Get those cleaned up. We'll finish making sure that we've got a good base coat. There's no areas that we missed. And then we will truly be back for the shading. So be back in a few minutes. Okay, I am back, and you know, we've got a pretty decent base coat on these now. We've cut off the supports that were underneath, and it's time to apply our wash. We are using this Seraphim Sepia. This is a shade. So a lot of people will say, like, they'll use shade and wash interchangeably. So just, you know, FYI, shades are, you know, Citadel's version of a wash, pretty much. You also have contrast paints. Contrast paints are, they're more concentrated. They're not the same as like a wash or a shade. It's a little bit heavier in terms of the pigment. So just as an FYI. So we're going to use this Seraphim Sepia, and we're just going to cover these heads that we've already done, or the hair that we've done, and we're just going to cover the whole thing. So I've got some over here on the side, and I'm just going to use this this brush here, this number 1, and just kind of cover this whole area. So just go over the whole thing. It is definitely going to pool into the crevices, and that's cool. That's what we want. So, when you're doing a wash or a shade, the pool is cool. We didn't want that with the base because that's a heavier pigmented paint. And if it dries in those crevices, it's actually going to like fill up the area. It's going to like harden there, and obscure a lot of that detail. This is more liquidy. So when it pools up, it's going to definitely leave that color. It's going to darken that area. But it's not going to significantly obscure the details. Now, if you keep applying several layers of this stuff, it could over time. But just, doing a overall coat of this is not typically going to obscure those details. So you can see as I'm applying this, it's going into those crevices and it's darkening the under spots, the recessed areas, but the raised areas are not as dark. Now we're still going to do some dry brushing on this afterwards to really bring out those highlights. But you can kind of already see it starting to work its magic and do what we're wanting it to do. So I will do that on this one, the other 2 wigs, and then I'll come back as we do the one for the Marvel Legends hairpiece. So I'll be back with the Marvel Legends hairpiece in just a second. Okay, so I have applied the shade to these wigs, and now I'm getting ready to apply it to the Marvel Legends hairpiece for the angel figure. So I'm just gonna move a little bit of this blue tack up a little bit, just get a better, firmer grip on this in the middle to where I can get kind of around all that hair. So just gonna get some of that shade and just start applying it here. And like I said, immediately you can see it start, kind of gathering up in the recesses, but leaving the top of it a little bit lighter. And we're gonna make it even more lighter with the dry brushing. So one thing to make note of, when you're using a, more fluid paint, whether it's a wash, shades, contrast, whatever, I would try to let this stuff air dry naturally. So I know we've talked in the past about using, whether it's a hair dryer or a heat gun, at times to, if you want to, dry your paint a little bit quicker so you can move on to the next steps. But with this stuff, because it's so liquidy, because it's going into the recesses, if you, try to, use something with movement, airflow, hair dryer, heat gun, whatever, what can happen at times is that it'll blow the stuff out of the crevices as it's in the process of drying, and then you'll see like where it'll be like dark here and then light here in the middle and then dark over here, because as it was still pooling here and trying to dry, when you hit it with that air pressure, it blew it away. And so now you've got a spot that looks really weird. So anytime that you're using, very liquidy washes, contracts, whatever, just do your best to try to let that air dry as much as you can. So this is kind of the step that we're at. I'm gonna let all 3 of those dry a little bit, air dry, of course, like we just talked about. And then I'm gonna take a look and see if there's any spots that we need to retouch up with it. And then the next step will be that we start doing some dry brushing. And I may, in this one, I'll probably just do dry brushing. That's about it. With these, because the hair strands are so thick, it's a bigger head sculpt, it's a bigger hair piece. What I may do is not only do just dry brushing, but I may do some actual like painting of the strands of hair just to kind of highlight and bring the highlights out even more. But we'll see. We'll do the dry brushing. We'll see how it looks. What we don't want is like a chalky look. So when we go to do the dry brushing, we'll go ahead and use our, dry brush palette so that we, don't take all the medium out of it. We'll try to do a very light dry brushing first. But if we get to the point where there is some chalkiness in the dry brushing, then we can always get in there with a tiny detail brush and just touch up those areas, which is what we'll do. So let me let this dry, and then we'll come back in a little bit after I've touched up any of the wash. And when I come back, we will start working on that dry brushing part of it. So see you guys in a few minutes. Okay, so I'm back. The shade on that has dried. I think we're looking pretty good as far as, kind of the two-tone color that we were looking for. And now we're gonna start doing some dry brushing. So I'm just gonna go back to that original color, that SoFlat yellow oxide, and we're just gonna do a little dry brushing on it. So getting a little bit on my brush and grab my dry brush palette. Okay, I want to get it down to the point where I feel like it's looking pretty good. Test it on the back of my hand. Still quite a bit of paint on there, so glad I tested it. Okay, now that's getting to the point where I'm looking for it to be. So I can see the crevices of my skin coming out, but still hitting the raised areas. That's what I'm looking for. So just start with this one, and just gonna lightly do some dry brushing here. Trying not to get too much in the crevices, just hitting the raised areas, trying to bring out those highlights a little bit. So once again, use that dry brush palette because it will get some of the paint off, but not necessarily absorb the medium like a paper towel would, or a paper towel, or any sort of cottony kind of fabric is going to suck up that water that's in the paint. So not only is it going to like remove the paint from the brush, but it's also going to suck up the moisture, and we don't want that. So that's where that dry brush palette comes in. So it's looking pretty good there. We'll take a look at this underneath the magnifier here in a bit, and if we need to touch up individual strands, if any of it looks, kind of chalky, we can definitely do that. But overall, this is kind of the look that we're going for here. So, and then I'll do another dry brush where I'll add a little bit of the more bright yellow color to that. Not sure if I'll do that on the angel one. We'll see. I think just this with the shade, and then do a dry brush of the original color. We may call that a day on there, because I don't know that I want that one getting as bright as the Mama wigs, but we'll take a look as we go. Okay. Okay. Once again, just trying to really hit those raised areas, so I'm not putting a lot of pressure on here. Just lightly going over this. I don't want the bristles of the brush going deep into those areas that we just darkened up. So I will continue doing this on the wig ones, and then we'll come back in a little bit and hit the angel one. So when you see me back, we'll be working on that angel head sculpt. Okay, we're back, getting ready to work on the angel head. So get a little bit more of that original color. And now on this one, remember the hairs are much thinner than the other one. So we got to be really light with this. You know, the other one had higher raised surfaces and lower recessed surfaces. This one doesn't. So we just gotta, we're gonna have to be gentle. I'm gonna take this one a little bit more gentle. So got a good amount on that dry brush there. So here we go. Just lightly going over this. And just trying to catch those recessed areas. I'm going against the grain, trying to hit it as I come across it. Okay, I think that's looking pretty good. It definitely looks a lot more realistic than the, you know, just molding it in that color and having it one solid color. You're definitely seeing some, you know, difference in the shades and highlights here. So I do think though, I'm probably gonna very lightly go over this with that lighter color that we're getting ready to do on the Mama ones. So on the Mama ones, let me slide this over. We've added a little bit of this pink bismuth Vanadate here. And what we're gonna do is we're just gonna add a little bit of that to the original color and just brighten that up a bit. So let me grab some of this, bring it over. And we're just brightening that up a little bit. And when you're mixing colors and you're creating, you know, kind of a highlight for another color that you already painted, it's a good idea to start off with the original color rather than starting from scratch. So, you know, some people will like grab a couple reds that'll be near each other and say, oh, I'm gonna do this as a base and I'm gonna do this as a highlight. But just because one's lighter than the other doesn't mean it's the same hue. And so it may look off. So it's better to start with the color that you already did as the base or your main color, and then just brighten it up a bit as you're going into the highlights rather than, you know, kind of starting from scratch. So I think this is about the color that we're going for. You can see the original color here and then this brighter color that we just came up with. But I'm gonna wipe, because I still got some of the brighter color like on the end of the brush here, or the sides of the brush. So I'm gonna make sure I wipe this off real good before I start using that color. Okay, so I just kind of wiped that off on my paper towel. I'm now gonna dip into this new color, right? And work on my dry brush palette to try to get a good portion of that off of there. And so we've already done a main dry brush on here, and now we're hitting a more raised, we're hitting that surface, you know, the raised surfaces, but we don't want to cover everything that we just did. So it's not like we're trying, the dry brush that we just did, we're not covering all of that. So we're going a lighter touch, and we want to do less paint on the brush. That way you still see some of the first color that we dry brushed, and then on top of that, you see some of this new color on the really tippy top raised parts. So, whereas we were doing the raised parts before, now we're doing the super, like the most raised parts. And that way you get that transition of color from the dark in the recesses to kind of a little bit lighter as it gets up, and then a lot lighter as it gets to the top of it. So as I start using this on the back of my hand, you can see like the transition from this darker yellow into the lighter yellow. And that's what we're looking for, okay? So now that I got that where I want it, I'm just gonna take one and very, very lightly go over this. And I'm just trying to hit those very top layers, the very top parts of this. Super gentle, really light, just hitting those really raised areas. And this is the part that, like I said, because these strands are so big on this wig, I may go back through with a teeny brush, like a 10/0 or a 5/0, and just hit some individual strands with this to bring out the last few details on it. And when I get to the angel head, instead of using this elf brush, I'm probably going to use the smaller one on there and just really gently go over that. So this is what the mama wig will look like. Okay, and I've got 2 more of those to do, so I'm going to do those, and then I'll be back and we will work on the angel hairpiece. Okay, I'm back, and we've worked on the 3 mama wigs, and now it's time to work on this angel hairpiece. Now, once again, we've talked about this one's got thinner strands, so instead of using the or the dry brush that I've been using, I'm going to use this smaller elf one. And so I'm going to get some of that color going on here and take this off with the dry brush palette. And I'm just going to very lightly hit these areas because I'm not looking for him to be, you know, like bleach blonde or you know, that it's not going to be super blonde. He's just going to be a little bit lighter than what it is now. So looked like I didn't have enough on that dry brush at all, so I just added a little bit more to it. I think that'll be okay. And, you know, we're just going to kind of lightly go across the grain on this, trying to catch these raised areas. I find by going across the grain, you're less likely to get into those crevices. So there we go. Hit the front a little bit more. Yeah, that's, man, I'm really liking the look of that. It's, you know, sometimes you get an action figure and you're like, man, I really like this, but if they would have just done this one extra thing, it would have made it even better. So, and that's kind of how I feel with this one. I love this angel figure. The hair just kind of bothered me a bit. So now you're seeing, you know, you've got that depth in there. So yeah, I think this is looking a lot better. Hopefully you guys agree. I don't know. Maybe you think it looks like crap. But so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to take these outside. I'm going to hit them with a little Mr. Super Clear UV matte. And that'll put a nice finishing tone on this. And then once I'm done with all of that and that's dried, what I'll do is I'll bring it back for one final where I'll actually put this hairpiece back on the head and back on the figure. And then I'll put one of these hair pieces on one of those Mama Mudthump heads that I painted last week, just so you kind of see what the overall look would look like. And then we'll close out the video. So I'll see you guys back in just a few minutes. Actually, for you guys, just a few seconds. Okay, I'm back. So we finished these heads. So like this is one with the, you know, the wig. Try to get some better light on that. So there you go with the wig there. You can see the dark areas, the light areas, just created a little bit more depth to it and just some color variant. I did not go through the individual strands as I was looking through it. It did not look like I had that chalky look to it. I guess the dry brush palette did a really good job of, you know, maintaining the medium while getting some of the paint off. So yeah, I'm really happy with how this looks. This is after a Mr. Super Clear Matte UV, which I will also link in the description. And then here is the finished angel. head. And I'll try to get some comparison pics of kind of before and after on that. But I really like how this came out. I think this looks a ton better than just, you know, kind of that molded yellow plastic piece that we had on there, rubbery plastic. So yeah, I really like that. And here's the kind of comparison on how those look side by side. So yeah, I think it's just a nice little upgrade to this figure, and I'll grab that figure in just a second to show you what it looks like, you know, on the figure now. And here is the Mama Mudthump that we painted last week with that wig on it. I'm holding it downward so you can see it, so the wig's kind of wanting to fall off. Normally it would be up like this and it would hold fine, but so that's how that wig goes on there, and it's just a piece that just comes off and goes on. So if you want to display Mama without her wig, you can. If you want to display her with her wig, you can do that as well. And if you wanted it to stay, you could always throw a little blue tack on there, or if you wanted it to be permanent, you could obviously glue that into place. But that's kind of how that looks on her. And then let me go grab the angel figure and I'll be right back. I'll pop that head on there. We'll take a look at that as a finished piece. All right, so here is the finished angel figure, and I'm really happy with it. Like I said before, I love this figure. The only problem I had was that hair just being one tone didn't do it justice. So I really like this upgrade. So hopefully this video helped you guys if you're looking to paint some blonde hair. Leave a comment if you had another strategy or a different way of doing this. And until next time, keep creating, folks.